Welcome, Tina.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Molly, in this
It's so
mad, mad world.
so it is a very mad, mad world. And right now, as we're talking, Donald Trump is in Davos. What is your takeaway of the last 5 hours?
Well, actually, for the first time, I used to go to Davos every year for 10 years. I used to do this kind of big women's dinner when I noticed that there were more private planes on the tarmac than there were actually women present. This is the one year I just wish I was there because it is epic. I mean, he's on such a rampage. At least we now know what Susie Wiles meant when she said that he has an alcoholic's personality, right? Because he is like on a massive bender right now. And it feels like someone has to do an intervention. Maybe he's like his sponsor in the AA group, has to do some kind of intervention because it's like because he's so unfettered, because there is nobody stopping him, he is now let loose on the world in a way that is truly, truly alarming. And I think part of it is because he thinks the midterms are coming. He's got like 6 months to just be the dinosaur who can, be unchecked. I mean, I love what Gavin Newsom said today when he said that, that he's a T-Rex, right? He said, you mate with him or he devours you, one or the other. He's absolutely right. It was a great quote, actually. I think Newsom is doing extremely well with the pushback because it has to be done. Fire has to meet with fire. And unless somebody comes on like Newsom against him, we're sunk.
We saw a bipartisan group go to Denmark and talk to them about the Greenland stuff, try to make them feel better. All of that was sort of erased by Trump admitting that, he no longer has to focus on peace. Were you surprised that he said the quiet part out loud?
It was quite stunning. I mean, in a way, it was oddly self-reflective when the New York Times said to him, is this important to America or psychologically important to you? He said, psychologically to me. So he was actually admitting that he has this kind of yearning, infantile sort of neediness to prove that he's Zeus, that he's the biggest power in the world. And that is a pathology, unfortunately, for which we're all paying, right? I mean, it's like
Right.
we're all paying the price for his personal pathology. But he actually admitted it, which was quite interesting, I thought. And yeah, it did surprise me actually that he said that.
In the world when magazines ruled, really, you covered all of this and you knew all of this and you talked to all these people. Are you surprised at the cowardice that really has sort of taken over the establishment when it comes to Trump?
It's really been shocking, actually. And it's kind of unfathomable. I almost feel that sort of cowardice is a virus in some strange way, just as it has been amazing to see the amoeba like sort of falling of so many people who you'd think wouldn't. And I mean, it's tough for journalists, as we know, because he's going after them all the time. But in the end, journalists can only be as brave as the owners of their publication allow them to be. I mean, clearly, you can get on a Substack and write what you like, but we also know that without the institutional backing of a strong organization with and a major audience, you're not going to have the same kind of impact. And when we saw, as we did, ABC folding, and paying off Trump in the George Stephanopoulos lawsuit, and we've seen the same thing happening with CBS. We've seen Jeff Bezos utterly having a head transplant in his ownership of the Washington Post. I mean, these things have been shocking enough and have unfortunately been a really big element in this new sort of climate of timidity. But I also kind of look at some of these Republicans who have been, of course, the very worst and stunningly pathetic. Is like you look at like Mike Johnson sort of sitting behind, Trump, and he's got this kind of pathetic little schoolboy sort of smile on his face. And then there was a wonderful moment that, was a great photograph. I wish it had been a still picture of Lindsey Graham on Air Force One, sort of standing at the door while Trump's standing there at the door of Air Force One. I can't even remember which of his tirades it was about Venezuela or whatever. And he's kind of got a kind of, he's wagging his little tail like a puppy. I mean, he's
Mhm.
looking at big old, masterful Trump, the big master of the universe. And there's little Lindsey Graham with his little wagging tail. It is so pathetic. It shows just how authoritarianism takes root. That if that there are so many people, with holes in their souls, essentially, who are looking to be nominated. I was just reading a very interesting piece in The Atlantic, about Pam Bondi, about how She was known as Bambi, because she was this kind of, really nice, cooperative, kind of not threatening, not particularly A-list prosecutor, but she had certain communications gifts and so on. No one can understand how, rather like Tucker Carlson, she's turned into this utterly different person. And of course, now, she's willing to do, there are no red lines for Pam Bondi. She will do anything. It's really terrifying. And, we all read about the 30s and keep asking ourselves, how could this happen? How could that happen? We now see how it can happen. It's a complete virus, this fear. And it's very, very alarming indeed.
I wonder when we talk about tariffs, like the whole point of the tariffs would be to onshore manufacturing. That's not happening because Donald Trump is is using tariffs in a way that is willy-nilly and not organized. So people don't want to build factories based on what a mad king tweets one day and not another. So the central premise of it is faulty. Do you think a place like Davos, where you have someone come in and try to sell an idea that's faulty, are you surprised that there's not anyone in Davos like explaining to him that his entire economic principle is not possible?
Well, of course, it's always been absolute madness because it takes 5 years to build a factory. I mean, the fact is that people don't want to go back to that kind of economy. It's like he wants to put the clock back, not sort of onshore jobs, actually. He just wants it to be the world of sort of,
Right.
the 1960s. And that's, again, it's part of his pathology. What I'm really told about these captains of the universe who are all there, they just want to get through the Trump period. I mean, they're willing to kind of sit there thinking, why do I put my head over the parapet, have my head shot off, my business damaged? I'm going to wait this out. I'm going to try not to upset him. I'll give him whatever money he needs for his whatever corrupt thing he's asking for, and we'll get through this. I think that they're mistaken. I think that every single time it happens, they enable him. And this
Mhm.
thing recently about the Board of Peace has been particularly, disgusting in my view. The idea that, Trump is supposed to be going to Davos. That was one of the things to discuss, like the Board of Peace in Gaza. Well, he's offered a seat to Putin, a mass butcher
Right.
in Ukraine. I think it was excellent that Macron, I think it was today, said, I don't want to be on the Board of Peace. And I thought, that's exactly right. Now let's
Mhm.
see everybody else say no. And then I was crushed to see that Mark Carney had agreed to be on it, leader of Canada. I think that's a big mistake. I mean, who wants to be on a board with Putin and Viktor Orban? And, I think that the only thing for this is there has to be strength in numbers. That is the only thing that works. I mean, if every world leader said, I am not going to join your Board of Peace, his Board of Peace becomes a sham, an absurdity, a ridiculous thing. Let's have Kim Jong-un on the Board of Peace, It doesn't work. And I think the same has been true of the media. I think that they should have stood together, not individually making these humiliating settlements. Unless, people stand together against Trump, there is no fighting him off. And he picks people off individually as he has, with the Republicans.
Yeah. No, and I think I wanna mention that the Board of Peace, there's $1 billion entry fee, right, for the Board of Peace.
Yeah, I mean, he's treating it like some kind of absurd, obscene sort of golden tier of golf club members at
Yeah.
Mar-a-Lago. It's just another shakedown, like everything else. Unless there is an outcry and a united outcry, this stuff is going to continue. Of course, one of the things one must always remember in power, as it were, in life, is that just when your hubris is at its maximum, that is when you make the biggest mistakes and you fall. Clearly, Trump was so engorged by, the kinetic warfare stuff he's been doing, the kinetic raids, that, the bombing of Fodor, which was widely acclaimed, the Venezuela, snatching of Maduro. He now thinks that he's invincible. Usually exactly at that moment is when you make, your biggest mistake. So, I mean, he's making at the moment, we see them as biggest mistakes. He doesn't see them as mistakes, but he's going to have some huge setback very soon that will, reverse, I think, the entire rampage.
You know, it's funny because his public polling is as bad as it's ever been, and people don't like the ICE stuff, and nobody trusts him. You know, he's back to where he was at the worst moments of his first term, probably a little bit lower. But I do think you're right that to him, he doesn't see it that way. And that is, in a way, almost the scariest part.
He doesn't see it that way, but he has reason not to see it that way. I mean, we've been through these polls before, right? I mean, we've always been hearing about how people don't like this or don't like that. I was quite fascinated. There was rather a good CNN segment with John King last night with him interviewing people who had voted for Trump a year ago. What do they feel about him now? Yeah, there was one woman who really doesn't like what's been happening very much. But, there was a lot who, several who do like it. And when we say everybody hates what he's doing with ICE, I don't think that's true that everyone hates it. I mean, I think that there was a very interesting piece in the Times actually over the weekend, which went into this bar in a more rural area of
Yeah.
Minnesota, and they were all basically seeing it very differently from the towns. So you do again have this real divide between what everybody, quote, thinks, in the urban setting versus what, quote, everybody thinks in the rural settings. And they do not see it the same way.
I do think that you can only live like that for so long. And what I'm thinking about is this reporting in the Times about this clean water project in Colorado where Donald Trump rejected the money they needed to finish the pipeline. And his voters are all being affected by that. And they said something to the effect of, like, we trust our guy. Like, he obviously, like the way people talk about God, right?
Right.
That we trust that he has what's best for us in store. But don't people eventually lose faith or?
Well, the question is, when is eventually, right? In this segment where they were interviewing Trump voters, there was one of them who said, "Yes, I'm a Trump guy. Look, he didn't like everything that Trump had done, but he said I'm more worried about the Democrats getting in, and that we have to get Trump back because we have to keep Congress because otherwise they might impeach him." So he has such a kind of long rope for forgiveness, it seems, from a lot of the voters. And I think that we underestimate that, in our kind of more urban outlook, tremendously. So the question of what is eventually, yeah, I mean, eventually, Maduro gets captured and he's put in prison after, everything that he did to his people in Venezuela. The question is, how long can Trump go on? I mean, will he do anything to disrupt the midterms, for instance? Because at this point, you can hardly imagine that Trump will brook any, restraint. And the prospect of having to somehow give up that restraint, it's hard at the moment to imagine that he will accept it. And in which case, what is he going to do? And will he disrupt those midterms? And then, of course, the biggest question is always, will he go? And I think we're all now feeling, well, yes, he is going to go. I actually think that for Trump, the whole of his second term has been devoted to enriching himself. I mean, I
Yeah.
actually think he's thought, in my second term, I'm going to leverage the hell out of this thing. I am going to fill my coffers. My kids are going to fill
Hmm.
their coffers, and it's all about the big, big fat shakedown. And that's
Yeah.
actually the way he's been working. So it's possible that he'll just feel, look, I've now got X billion. Before I was a minnow of a billionaire. Now I'm a massive billionaire. I've got what I want, and then he'll continue to sort of leverage that, beyond the presidency. But it's hard to know. I mean, he seems so kind of incredibly intoxicated and drunk on power, isn't he, at the moment? I mean, he just is engorged with the power. And while people continue to fall on their faces before him, I mean, it's hard to see that he's going to give up that buzz.
I want you to talk about CBS News because of all the people I know, I think of you as one of you've just seen it all. So, right? And you've written about it and you've talked about it and i- David Ellison gets to take over. The dad gives him CBS. He puts in Barry. What is your take on what's happening right now there?
Well, the whole kind of Ellison Trump sort of dynamic is revolting. When it comes to CBS News, David Ellison, has installed sort of Barry Weiss, to run the editorial side of it. I actually think that Barry is a really talented editor, and I think, I think Free Press is an incredibly sort of vibrant news platform. Actually, I thought she made a big mistake going into CBS because it would have been better for her to be the kind of Ellison guru on the outside than it is for her to be in the actual sort of line of fire of these editorial decisions. I think that the project is ultimately doomed in the sense that I think CBS is such a kind of lumbering retro asset at this point that I don't see how any amount of editorial vim can sort of somehow turn this thing around at a point when it's actually long past its kind of moment of relevance in the big picture terms, in the long term. I mean, obviously it's a very valuable and important asset at the moment, but that we know that the trajectory cannot be one that in the end certainly survives in anything like this current form. But I think that the Ellisons don't understand news, don't respect news, and this is what my major beef is with these digital Silicon Valley billionaires, essentially, is that their arrogance is so complete. They have absolutely no understanding or actually even respect, whatever, for journalism. None. They do not think it counts. They don't think it matters. They think it's there to be plundered. I think that they think it's there to be scraped, for their AI projects. They just don't seem to have any moral understanding of what journalism brings to democracy, how important it is. Nor do they want that particularly. I
Right.
mean, journalists are a hindrance. Journalists investigate them. Journalists are a pain in the neck. They stop
Right.
them getting their deals, etc. So they don't like journalists either. And, I find that a very alarming thing. It makes you think, well, okay, so who should own these media assets? Because it's a question of who can afford to have them. So, I mean, these are the people right now with the money, but they are absolutely unfit as owners of something as important as news platforms.
Like, news is clearly in a crisis, and I mean, I work in this business, and everything is just it just shrinking and shrinking and it's like shocking. So we need reporting. It's nice to have opinion writing. I do opinion writing, but at the end of the day, the reporting is the stuff that's going to hold power accountable. In my mind, it feels like a failure to legislate, a failure to make the kind of tax incentives that make this lucrative. Just like why you weren't having filming in the United States of movies and television, because they weren't giving the tax breaks to make it worthwhile. I mean, do you think that's what it is, or do you think it's a deeper something at the core of American values right now?
No, I mean, I think it's exactly what you say, a combination of things. I mean, I think in the early 2000s, the enormous mistake that media made, was to allow Zuckerberg and co. to basically come in and steal all the content free and say they
Mm.
just took it. And unfortunately, legacy media sat there being all naive. They were utterly rolled. I mean, they went, "Oh, it's so exciting to have all this traffic, et cetera, et cetera. That, oh, well, look at all this great all these great eyeballs we've got looking at our stuff." Yes, but it was them, Silicon Valley, that was monetizing those eyeballs. And so, the business model was essentially blown up in a giant heist. And then, as if it wasn't bad enough, like now, sort of 25 years later with AI, they're going to do it again. And the same, well, they are doing it again. They're doing it, and the same people too. So they're saying, okay, now we're going to scrape all your content. Copyright is really like we're in a race with China. So, there's no time for this kind of, these kind of discussions about like whose it is. If you don't say yes, I know we'll pay you something, but it won't. I mean, even a couple of $100,000 million for scraping a major news outlet's content is peanuts for them. Absolute peanuts. It's peanuts for the news outlet when you consider all the brain power that's going to be sucked into these AI tools. So they're once again going to essentially rape the media business. And all the media business does is, sort of the news business does is, sit there kind of trying to fight back with what tools do they have? I mean, thank God we have some strong, serious outlets that have the wealth to, to do the great work, whether it's the New York Times or Reuters, which does amazing investigations actually, and is often not talked about enough, I think, because, the Reuters actually does, thanks to David Thompson, who is the chairman of Reuters and whose company it is. He actually believes in journalism. And he's one of these quiet billionaires who who simply, actually does believe in the moral point of journalism. But they're very, very few and far between. And so it is an enormous crisis. And yet at the end of the day, it's like, what is encouraging, perhaps, is that some of the biggest stories in the last, some of the most newsmaking stories in the last few months have actually come out of those maligned mega legacy media outlets. I mean, whether it's, Vanity Fair suddenly having a comeback with their great, Susie Wiles piece, or whether it's Emma Tucker, who is doing the most amazing work, I think, at the Wall Street Journal,
Yeah.
publishing the Epstein birthday book, or, they're actually doing great stuff, is the truth. And it's very irritating to the powers who don't want them to report. But we have a lot of very brave journalists around, and some some very good editors around. So I do think there is a way to keep on being relevant, but it just shouldn't be this hard, and
Yeah.
nor should journalists be so financially sort of punished. I mean, it blows my mind, that incredible talents are willing to work for so little, frankly. And I've got to say, I admire journalists hugely, who are willing to sort of, they're not well paid. It's very, very hard trying to kind of dig out information, with bootstrapping, door knocking, the old fashioned inquiry. It's really, really hard, but we need them. They're the soldiers of democracy, who stop the monsters from taking over.
Tina, thank you so much for coming on.